This is Anarchast.
Welcome to Anarchast. I'm here with Richard Maybury of the U.S. and World Early Warning Report, live at the Casey Conference, the When Money Dies conference in Phoenix. How are you doing, Richard?
Very good, very good.
And it's happy to have you on. I was talking to Doug Casey, a mutual friend of ours, and he mentioned that you were an anarchist. I didn't realize that. Just the thing that I thought about you, you're always talking about, your report talks a lot about war sort of stuff and that sort of thing, so I just assumed, oh, he must be a neocon or something, but then Doug said, no. So he told me I should have you on, so definitely nice to meet you. And
well, thank you, same here.
Yeah, and you were saying earlier you'd like to talk a little bit about what the definition of anarchy is. Why don't you go ahead and talk about that?
I think it's one of the most misused words in the English language. Anarchism is, originally it was taken to mean just someone who believes that the case for government being necessary is not proven, and that until it is proven, we should be working in the direction of less government all the time, less government every day, less today, less tomorrow, less the next day. And I would also like to point out that anarchism is not the same thing as being against law. I actually see government as the enemy of law. They inflate laws in the same way as they inflate the currency. And just as when you increase the amount of money, you devalue each individual unit of money, when you inflate the amount of law, then you destroy the credibility of each individual law. Right now there are more than 4,000 federal penalties or federal laws that have a felony punishment to them. 4,000, and ignorance of the law is no excuse. If you break one of those laws, you're responsible for whatever it is, and you can go to prison. 4,000 just on the federal level. And so people just they blank out, and they don't even pay attention to the law in a lot of cases anymore, because you can't possibly read them all, much less obey them all. And so to me, I never ever use the word anarchist to apply to myself, because people don't understand the word.
Right, it's got a bad connotation.
Right. But to me, it just means that until I see evidence that political government really is necessary, I'm going to assume it's not.
What kind of evidence would you need to see?
Among other things, I would want to see evidence that the benefits of any given government, quote, service, unquote, are really worth the cost. And that's an interesting challenge that nobody has ever picked up on. Everybody is just taught that all of these political services that we get are necessary, and the value of them is greater than the costs. But has anybody ever shown you the evidence that the value is greater than the costs? And I'm talking about all the costs, not just the monetary cost, but the amount of damage that's done by so many of these government programs, the opportunities that are destroyed by them. An example is, we're all taught that child labor laws are naturally a good thing because they protect children from having difficult jobs. Well, it used to be that a child who came from or was living in a abusive home where there was a lot of physical violence, and the child may even have been in danger of his or her life. They could just walk out the door and go somewhere else away from that danger and get a job and take care of themselves. They can't do that anymore. They are stuck in that house, and they know they can't. That's probably the worst part of it. The kids know they cannot go get a job and take care of themselves, so they stay where they are and they cooperate with what's happening to them. And so the people who believe that there's a law for everything never look at the fact that there are some number of of young girls out there who become prostitutes because they can't get a job. After they've finally fled their home where they were being abused, they can't get a job anyplace. They wind up being prostitutes. And usually the boys wind up being thieves because they can't get a job. Those costs are never counted. Nobody ever pays any attention to those costs.
Yeah, well, so many things are like that in society nowadays. Well, the government, especially in the U.S., as you know, has just become all-encompassing. They're in every facet of life here.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not going in the right direction.
No, it's not. No.
Do you have any views on well, I know you do in your newsletter. What are your views on the future? What do you see happening here? Do you think the U.S. government's going to collapse?
Well, it certainly will someday. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's not viable anymore. It's been broke pretty much all my adult life, and now it's destitute. So, it can't last. As far as what's happening right now, I am fairly convinced, I'm not 100% certain, but I'd say 98% certain, that we are in the beginning of a old-fashioned textbook deflationary depression like the Great Depression, and of that magnitude or larger. And I think that if the government does not launch another QE, quantitative easing, pretty quick, then we're going to go all the way into this depression, and it's going to be like 1929 was, a horrendous financial crash, much worse than 2008, and followed by a terrible depression after that. Unemployment, in the Great Depression, unemployment hit 25%, and I think it could go even higher this time. So I'm expecting that pretty soon, within weeks, certainly not more than a few months, if I'm right, they will start the next QE, and they are going to print a lot of money. Hundreds of billions of dollars will be dumped into the economy to try to stop this deflationary depression that they have triggered off. They triggered it by stopping the previous QE. And I wish we had the time to get into all the economics behind this and what's really going on, but of course we don't. But essentially, I think, yes, we're in another Great Depression right now, and they can bring us out of it with another QE temporarily. They can kick the can down the road a little further, but it's going to happen eventually. They can only kick the can just so far, and then we're going to be in it up to our necks.
Yeah, well, they've been doing that for a while, kicking the can, so it's definitely wouldn't surprise me if they just kept doing it. And that's what they'll probably do, is just keep doing it as long as they can.
Right.
That's what politicians do.
Right.
So what's your background? Were you born a freedom lover, or did you learn it? Or
No, I believed everything I was taught in school. They taught me that the government and the country are the same thing, and that if I was loyal to my country, then I had to be loyal to the government. I got my draft notice in 1967, and I just went ahead and went in the military because I'd been taught in the schools that was my duty, and I just followed what the schools taught me. The schools are all owned or controlled by government agencies, and so they teach us to believe in government. And they teach a blind faith in government. And one of the worst things they teach is that the solution to every problem is more government. The whole population is subjected to those kinds of laws or those kinds of lessons, and I believe them too. So, I went into the Air Force, and I went into Air Force Special Operations. It was the 605th Air Commando Squadron, and there I was. I thought I was going in to protect my country. What I was doing was going in to train the troops of dictators in Latin America to help keep those dictators in power. And by virtue of doing that, well, for instance, Manuel Noriega of Panama is one of the troops I trained. And in the process of actually getting involved in real politics, not what I was taught in school. I was taught that politics is Democrats versus Republicans and elections and speeches and all. That's not politics.
That's the show.
Politics involves guns. And so I got into real politics in Central America and found out it had nothing to do with defending my country or anything. It was just to preserve the U.S. empire. And that really opened my eyes when I saw the real stuff going on and realizing what we were really doing in those countries. And then I get out and I go to college and study business and economics, and these professors are just forcing us to learn Keynesian economics and socialist economics, both of which assume that the government can be trusted. And it just blew my mind, that these people are telling me the government can be trusted. It was just absolutely 100% off of what my own personal experience was. So that's essentially how it all began for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people coming into the freedom movement, anarchism, a lot of them are coming from the U.S. military now because they've seen what's going on.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, there's so many young guys. Well, there's a whole, I think they even have their own groups, but, because they've seen what's really going on out there, and they know it's not about winning hearts and minds.
Right.
And I have a good friend who's actually over in Afghanistan right now working as a contractor, and same thing. He went over, he saw what's going on. Now he's a very freedom-minded person, and he's totally against the government now. But he still takes the paycheck as a contractor. But he does it sort of as he actually gets paid over $100,000 a year and does nothing, literally nothing. He's just, there's so many contractors over there. It's just crazy what's going on. So you went to that point. Did you start to read any books or anything that really expanded your mind about this?
Well, while I was in college, actually, in college one day, one of my professors was arguing in favor of Keynesianism and socialism and how the government can take care of everybody if we just trust them and give them all of our money. Well, I got mad, and so I'm arguing with him in class, saying, I've been there, I've seen how they really behave, and believe me, it's nothing like what you say it is. And after that class, some guy came up to me and he asked me if I'd been reading Ayn Rand, which I had. A friend had just recommended Atlas Shrugged to me, and I read that. And I said, yeah, and he said, have you ever heard of libertarianism? And I said, no. And he gave me the platform, just a little pamphlet that was the platform of the Libertarian Party, which had just been founded. And I read that and said, these people are further down the road in this than I am. I didn't know it existed. And so I started getting more and more deeply into that. Harry Browne was a tremendous influence to me. And then, Murray Rothbard, Henry Hazlitt, all of the more early writers. And I just devoured all of that stuff. It was voracious because, among other things, the economics classes I was taking were totally out of touch with reality. They had no ability to explain what was going on in those days. They were wrong about everything. And here I was reading the Austrian economists who had very clear, concise explanations for what was going on. I could understand it. It wasn't a lot of voodoo that they were handing me. It was these clear explanations of how the world really works. And it becomes
very clear very quickly when you get the real information.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we have to actually just take a break. If you can hang with us and do a few more minutes, if do you have the time?
Yeah, sure.
Great.
Sure.
We'll be right back.
Okay.
And we're back with Richard Maybury of the U.S. and World Early Warning Report, which is a fantastic newsletter if you're interested in worldview and politics and that sort of thing. And So I wanted to ask you, right now in the U.S., Ron Paul is making quite a bit of a noise. The media is having a hard time ignoring him now. They're still trying, though.
Right, right.
I was wondering if you, what's your perspective on that? For myself, as an anarchist, I don't really like to even get involved in any political process, but you know, I'm curious to hear your view on that.
Well, Ron is an old friend of mine, I'm kind of I've got a kind of a special relationship in that sense. When he returned to Congress in the mid-90s, he had to abandon his own newsletter, and he wanted to turn the customers over to another newsletter that was similar to his in thinking. And so he picked my newsletter, and so his customers were handed over to my newsletter to keep up that train of thought, you know. So he and I don't agree on absolutely everything, I don't think, but you know, he and I have had a lot of conversations over the years, and we're pretty close. And I think the important thing to keep in mind is that by being in the position he is, where he really can command news time, he can get the message out and let people know there is an alternative to the liberals and conservatives. You know, that by itself is an extremely important thing to be able to do, even if he doesn't win. And you know, he's still accomplishing a great deal. Because the day is going to come, and I don't think it's going to be too far away now, where this country is going to have a tremendous crisis, and part of the population is going to be demanding that the government save them. Another part of the population is going to be saying, oh my God, the government is the cause of this. How can you possibly ask them to save them? And what Ron Paul is saying is there is a fully worked out philosophy of freedom that has been out there for decades. You know, I tapped into it in the early 70s, and you know, it's very well thought out. Some brilliant people have been doing this for so long, and it builds on the work of the American founders, Jefferson and Patrick Henry and all the rest of them back more than 2 centuries ago would easily recognize what we're talking about today. We are the philosophical descendants of them. They were arguing that political power is evil. It corrupts. And it corrupts not only the morals, but also the judgment. And if you're going to have a government, you'd better have one that has the power very strictly limited, because whoever gets it is going to be corrupted by it. And I think Ron would be the first one to agree with me on that. And his attitude, I believe, I don't want to be speaking for the man, but I'm pretty confident that his attitude, that if by some chance he does win, he's just going to start cutting things out. I mean, it'll be cut. We don't need the education department, get rid of it. We don't need the transportation department. You know, they don't transport anything, get rid of it.
What do they do?
Yeah, we don't need the agriculture department. They don't grow anything, get rid of them. That's what's going to happen, and he'll keep doing that for as long as he can.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think that he would. I don't know if, you know, if he got in there and he wanted to really cut these things, I don't know if he'd have the support of, you know, if you're going to cut those departments, how many tens of thousands of people work in those departments? They're not going to be very happy. And those people that are really, they say anarchists are violent and all that. We don't do anything. We're actually peace lovers. Those people who get violent are those government employees when they lose their jobs. Everywhere in the world, they go, those guys, they go crazy.
Yeah, they were taught in school, in the government-controlled schools, they were taught that they have a right to that job. It's a piece of property and they own it. And if you try to get rid of their bureau or their department or whatever, their attitude is that you're stealing their property. And because that's what they were taught. They don't know anything different than that. You know, how people can put their children's minds in the hands of a government agency, that is a real puzzle. You know, the day will come when historians will look back at this time in history, and they will just shake their heads and say, how could you people do that?
I agree completely, and now it's even getting worse. They're starting to do vaccinations of children in the schools without even getting the parents' permission. I don't know if you've heard about this lately.
No.
Yeah, there's bills being passed right now that they want to make it so the parents don't even need to be notified or asked to have their kids vaccinated.
Oh.
in school.
Yeah, right. That's because your child is the property of the state. You know, you don't have anything to say about it.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, right.
So you've been in this line of thought for a few decades, for sure.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on, in my opinion, ever since the internet, things have really started to happen because
Yes.
as the information gets out there. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, it sure gives a forum to the libertarians that they never had before, and the anarchist libertarians are one branch of libertarianism. That's an interesting point we could make. The general movement, the general freedom movement, is called the libertarian movement, and there are various types of libertarians. There are limited government libertarians, there are anarchist libertarians, Christian libertarians, all sorts. They come in all stripes. And all of us, you know, there are disagreements among them, which is why there are different kinds, but essentially we're all trying to head in the right direction, or the same direction, which is to get America back to what America is supposed to be, which is a free country.
Yeah, it's one of the least free countries in the world nowadays, if you look at it objectively.
In a lot of ways, yeah, you're right, especially militarily. Oh my God, it is horrible. I'm speaking from experience there again. The military just has so little to do with defense. I was looking, you know, my newsletter, of course, deals a lot with military affairs because they're so important in the investment world, and most investors don't realize that an awful lot of what happens to your money is driven by military developments. So I keep track of what the military is doing. U.S. government has 11 aircraft carriers, the big super carriers. 11 of those carriers. About half of them are in dry dock right now, which is fairly common because salt water rots steel. And so whatever navy you have, any place in the world, it's going to spend, large parts of it are going to be in dry dock all the time. So if they tell you you've got 11 aircraft carriers, well, yeah, technically you do, but an awful lot of them aren't good for anything at the moment. They're in dry dock. So about half of those 11 are in dry dock, and one is tasked to defend the United States, sailing around in U.S. waters, protecting America. All of the others are on the other side of the world. You know,
The Department of Offense.
yeah, the Department of Offense. Yeah, they're over there waiting for Washington to tell them which new war to get into.
Yeah, and who's the Nobel Peace Prize winner? Barack Obama. Who's in Iraq, Afghanistan. He's bombing Libya. He's drone bombing people all over the world. We live in a real 1984 type of a world at the moment.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I remember when Clinton was bombing, I'm pretty sure it was Serbia. Might have been Afghanistan too, because he bombed Afghanistan.
You can't keep track of all the bombing.
I think it was Afghanistan. Yeah, when Clinton was bombing Afghanistan, some news person asked a military officer what this was all about, and believe it or not, the officer told the truth. He said, "This is a theatrical strike." And this was when Clinton was having his affairs, his sexual scandals, and what the officer was saying to us was we're killing those people over there as a way of diverting attention away from Clinton and Monica Lewinsky.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and Americans don't face that, but people in other countries who are being bombed, they know what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, if you travel around the world, most people actually know what's going on with all that stuff. But you come here to the U.S. because the media is so controlled, and they don't just tell them anything about all that stuff. They just say, "Oh, they're bad," and you know, they hate us for our freedom.
Yeah, right.
all that kind of thing. Well, anyway, we're running out of time. It's been great.
Yeah.
Can you let people know how to get your newsletters on the internet?
Oh, yeah. Right. Just go to richardmaybury.com, and then there's also an 800 number you can call. That's 800-509-5400. 800-509-5400.
Great, and it's a highly recommended, highly respected newsletter. And if you're interested in more the, you'd say more like the political, is that more your slant political?
Oh no, I do a lot of economic and investing stuff. In fact, it's been mostly economics and investment for several years.
Oh.
And I'm starting to drift back now toward the geopolitics as a driver of financial change, because I think the geopolitics is again beginning to rear its ugly head.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Well, it's been great. Thank you very much.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you. So it's Richard Maybury, U.S. and World Early Warning Report, and that's it for Anarchast. Peace, love, and anarchy.